Once a thick forest of ohi'a and koa trees, and a tall hapu'u fern, this place later became famous for its sugar plantation. In this episode of Hawaii's Most Haunted, we visit Ola'a. Beyond the cool waters and trade winds of our idealistic paradise is the thin veil which separates our world from the place where the shadows talk back. Welcome to Hawaii's Most Haunted. Winding its way between tall lehua trees, artistically draped ie, and the graceful plumes of the hapu'u trees, the first volcano road was opened to the public in 1894. This 30-mile stretch of road made possible a speedy trip from Hilo to the volcano in a little less than 7 hours by 4-horse stagecoach, the popular mode of travel in those days. A new volcano road was opened in 1927, which allowed a more modern means of travel with much shorter time frames. But no matter the mode of travel, Hawaiians believe the same thing. The forest of Pane'ewa, the place this new road cut through, is haunted. Travelers walking through the forest at night reported hearing voices, sometimes calling their names. If traveling on horseback, the horse would stop suddenly with his ears pricked up and refuse to go any further. With this new road, perhaps one could travel fast enough to avoid such otherworldly events. Perhaps. In the summer of 1934, on Volcano Road, near a place that used to be called Ola'a, dozens of motorists reported that something would rap on their cars as they drove. After several local reports, whatever was happening had come to be called the Ola'a ghost. People who have driven the road stated, "You can feel them, whether or not you're psychic or clairvoyant." The ghost would appear between the first hill on the Hilo side, just after crossing the bridge, until as far as the 8-mile post. You must drive slowly, they say, and observe the strict silence, quiet as a mouse. You will first hear a soft rap on the back of your car, and then a harder knock on the top. If you show fear, your car will be shaken with a resounding thud by an unseen fist. On August 28th of that year, a man and his son claimed to have felt and seen the Ola'a ghost. There were dents on the back of his car. When asked to describe the ghost, the Hilo man said that the thing he remembered most about the apparition was its big, round head, which he said looked like a moon. One Hilo woman who claimed to see the strange spirit said that the spirit was a handsome warrior, dressed only in a malo. But as her companion in the vehicle turned to see it, the figure floated away, and then, in a sudden burst of light, it was gone. She believed that the spirit she saw may have either been Kamapua'a or Kumukahi. A number of Hawaiians, when told this story, nodded their heads knowingly. Pane'ewa Forest is haunted, they say. It is sacred ground, and beneath the soil lies the bones of generations of Hawaiians. Have you ever dreamt of someone you've never met? Have you dreamt of a person you've never met, but they've already passed away? In 1918, Mrs. Franklin Warren was fast asleep when in a dream, a young girl appeared and told her, "This is not your house. This is my house." In her dream, the young Mrs. Warren answered, "No, this is my house." "It is my house," affirmed the strange young girl. "Come with me, and I will show you why." She reportedly didn't remember the rest of it, but young Mrs. Warren was so impressed by the dream that she told a neighbor, Ernest Pua'a, who then told another neighbor, Mahi Li'ili'i. Li'ili'i told the young Miss Warren to follow him. "Come with me, and I will show you what she meant." He took the young Mrs. Warren and Mr. Pua'a to a place out behind the Warren homestead, at the edge of the forest. There, he told them that young Emma Warren was buried, and that it was she who appeared in the dream, though her sister-in-law had never met her. Pua'a shared the story with others and was laughed at because the people there knew the Warrens, who were well-known and upstanding members of the Ola'a community. The story eventually reached the ears of the police, who began an investigation which led them to the graveside of a young girl. When workers had dug up the spot, which Mahi Li'ili said the girl was buried, they uncovered a roughly made box in which they found a skeleton. The coroner's report stated that Emma died about 1907 from the effects of bruises caused by the cruel and felonious beating and striking with a deadly weapon. The parents, Hannah Warren, and her husband, Charles Warren, were arrested for murdering their child 11 years before. Now, what happened to young Emma Warren had become quite the controversy back in the days. Her parents insist that Emma suffered from leprosy from 3 years before she died, and her death was due to the disease. Her illness and death was never reported, for in those days the authorities would have taken her away, and Charles and Hannah Warren, her parents, say they were afraid. Charles Warren stated that Emma died on March 11, 1906, but the coroner and police data say she died late in 1907. Newspapers of the day printed any information they could find as it became available from police reports, court appearances, and personal interviews. In 1918, one man claimed that 11 years prior, he witnessed Emma's mother beating her over the head and shoulders with a large stick one day, under the house, which was in stilts above the ground. The man called out to Hannah Warren that she should not be beating her child as such, to which the girl's mother replied, "Go to hell. You have no business here." Later that afternoon, the man saw Hannah Warren leave the house with her children in tow, but young Emma was not with them. He looked closer and noticed that the front door was not closed all the way, and peeked inside. There, he said he saw Emma laying on a mat on the floor, covered in bruises. He went back to his house and told his roommate what he'd seen, and the pair returned to the house with bread and milk. Both men then claimed that Emma was unable to eat, and they could not understand what she was trying to say, as she spoke in a very low, soft voice. The men left, contemplating what to do. The very next morning, before the sun had fully risen, the men said that Mahi Li'ili came by with one of the young Warren children on his shoulders to say that Emma Warren had died. Perhaps because the Warrens were so well known in the community, we can't say, but the matter of the beating and death of Emma Warren went unreported. Emma and her sister Rebecca were said to have been visiting an aunt in Hilo for some time before the beating. They returned home, and the mother, meeting the aunt by chance just a week after the girls had left her, told her that Emma was dead. The aunt thought it was strange that Emma, who was in perfect health, would have died so suddenly, and worse, that the aunt had not been told of it, nor invited to the funeral. Mahi Li'ili is said to have admitted to having been called to the house to help Charles Warren. When he got there, he helped Warren place what he believed to be Emma's body, wrapped in a quilt, into a roughly made box. Her face was covered with a white cloth, and blood showing through the material. Mahi left for a bit, then came back. It is said that he and Warren took the box to where a grave had been dug in the forest. That's how he knew where the grave was, and showed it to Emma's sister-in-law when she spoke of her dream. There was a question in the community of Emma's disappearance. A man who was Warren's supervisor at the time remembers asking about her, to which Warren stated that she had gone to Maui to visit her grandmother. Rumors were floating about everywhere. One man said that Emma told him her mother wants to kill her. It was said that Emma was her father's favorite, and her mother was insanely jealous over the fact. Another rumor said that Emma had been talking to a Puerto Rican man in the neighborhood, and the beating was punishment for that. Another new rumor surfaced that Emma was her grandmother's favorite grandchild, and they spent much time together. Her mother is said to have been jealous of this, and the fact that Emma was also her father's favorite. About 2 months after Emma's disappearance, the grandmother came from Maui to visit her son, who'd been telling the neighbors that Emma had gone to Maui. When the grandmother asked about her, the father said Emma had gone to Kaumana. The grandmother demanded that they fetch Emma for her, and after several days, the father told her that Emma had eloped, and he did not know where she was. 2 years later, the grandmother returned and asked where Emma was. The father then told his mother that Emma had died. The grandmother asked, "Why didn't you tell me before that she was dead?" I know that she is dead. She has come to me in a vision and has said that she was killed, and that when she returns again, your wickedness will be found out. What is peculiar about this phrase is that the next time Emma returned was in a vision of her sister-in-law that led to the rediscovery of the alleged crime 11 years before. Newspapers report that the prosecution's key witness, Mahi Li'ili, was very timid on the witness stand. He hesitated for many minutes at a time before answering the most elementary questions, and other signs of nervousness were also present. It was evident that he was afraid to look toward Mrs. Hannah Warren, who sat regarding him with what the newspaper called a sardonic smile while he was on the stand. Mahi avoided even glancing in her direction, as if he feared to meet her eyes. Friends said that Mahi believed Mrs. Warren was a kahuna, and as such could do him harm. Around his neck, inside his shirt, he wore a charm of green leaves as protection against her supposed powers. After his appearance, a deputy sheriff had arranged for Mahi to remain secluded in Papa'aloa until he was required to give testimony to the grand jury. After nearly 2 months in trial, it took the jury 90 minutes to acquit Hannah Warren. One juror stated, "The occurrences in the case took place so many years ago that it was possible the witness could not give absolute reliable testimony one way or another. There was the possibility that the jury might make an error, and if an error had to be made, we would rather err on the side of mercy. The case for the prosecution was weak, and the case for the defense was equally weak," said another juror, "but we could not convict a woman of murder, so long as there is a loophole of doubt. The crime of murder is too serious for that." Though we don't know the true circumstances surrounding the death of Emma K. Warren, we do know that it probably would not have come to light if the wife of Emma's brother, a woman she'd never met, hadn't come forward with her vision. Emma was later given a proper burial at Curtistown Catholic Cemetery, and perhaps that was enough to lay her spirit to rest.